What's up, guys? It's your boy, the Chat Kid, coming back at you with Jeff the Killer Part 4, I believe. Anyways, where we left off, Jeff the Killer's been put in hospital. And yeah, he's just been listening to his mother and father's conversation. Alright, no time to waste, let's go. Don't even get me started on that, Sheila replied. I couldn't believe it when Randy and his friends explained to the medics and police how it all happened. Randy was just trying to show Jeff around his house and wanted to show him the collection of magazines his dad kept under the garage. You know, boys, he was probably hoping there were a couple of Playboys in there or something. Then he said Jeff found the box containing the flare gun and just wouldn't stop playing around with it. You should have heard those other boys, Matt. They told me that they practically begged Jeff to put it down before he got hurt, but he just had to show off. I just don't know where we went wrong, Matt. I thought us moving out here to a nice neighbourhood would make everyone happy. Jeff thought he just wants to fight us for everything. And while it all came together in Jeff's mind, he continued to swim in that black ichor of hatred and rage. The morphine drip added a nice touch of euphoria. Jeff could almost see himself plunging into the syrupy waters of hatred and emerging change. Each dip brought him so much twisted pleasure, and that was when he finally understood. He could sample the pleasure now, not because he was enjoying what was happening, but because he knew he could enjoy what was to come. Just as the doctor had predicted, Jeff had scheduled to go home a few days later. During his time at the hospital, he never asked to see his face. It wasn't until the next day that he finally asked for a mirror. The nurse had come in to change his bandages, as was the routine. She was a pleasant woman. She spoke to him, asked him how he was doing. He enjoyed her visits. So, on the final day, when she arrived to clean and dress his face, he asked to see himself. Are you sure, sweetheart? Would you like me to call your parents first? She asked. No, thank you, Jeff replied. I think I want to see it for myself first without them standing over me. I understand, she replied honestly, without a hint of pretension. Once the bandages were off, she handed him a small hand mirror. Would you like me to step out the room? Jeff ignored her and looked at himself, taking stock of the damage. Sure enough, his face was a mess, the entire left side at least. The flare struck him travelling upwards and burned a scar into his cheek that extended to his eye. At first glance, he was almost looked like he was smiling on that side. The scar was still bright red and burned tissue spread out on either side. Once it arrived at his eye, the news did not get any better. His eye was white, just a lifeless bulb plugged into his face. He closed the right eye and found that he could see nothing from the left eye at all. The scar continued up to the left side of his forehead. The damage was less severe there, however. The hair to the left side of his head was burned off, leaving a few strands to stick up here and there. Sorry, sweetie, but I have to put the clean bandages on, she told him. Jeff smiled. It's okay. There'll be plenty of time for me to admire myself later. There was no joy from his parents on the ride home, or upon arrival. They spoke very little, and there was a tension in the car that simply wouldn't fade out. As for Lou, he was thrilled that his brother was okay, but he didn't know what to say concerning the damage to his face. So, after asking a few questions about the accident and recovery, he fell silent as well. They walked into their home at dusk, and Lou asked about dinner. He suggested that Jeff pick a place to celebrate his return home. Just go to sleep, both of you boys. Just go to sleep, Sheila remarked. She and her husband both retreated to their bedrooms as well, to argue or feel sorry themselves. Who knew? Jeff and Lou didn't speak much last night. Jeff spent most of the evening staring at himself in the mirror. He kept on pulling at the bandages back and looking at the scars. Lou wanted to see them too, but he felt that might be imprudent to ask. I'm glad you're home, Jeff. I really missed you, and I'm glad you're okay, Lou said to Jeff as he stared at himself. I'm not okay, Lou, and neither are you. None of us are really. There's a sickness here. The only difference is now my sickness shows on the outside as well, Jeff replied, his voice as flat as that of a dancing machine. What are you talking about? Lou asked. One day, you'll see it too. This is what happens, though. This is what happens when it all falls down, Jeff said, still peeking behind his bandages. Jeff, I don't know what you're trying to say, Lou responded. Jeff didn't reply, though, and after several moments, Lou left him alone. Lou went downstairs to his parents' room and knocked on the door. "What is it?" the mother's voice asked. "Mom, I think Jeff is acting weird. You might want to go talk to him." "Go away, Lou. Leave your mother alone," his father's voice answered. Lou, being young, had no other ideas, so he returned to his own bedroom. He didn't know those would be the last words he'd ever hear his parents speak from him again. That night, Sheila and Matt Woods awoke together, both being light sleepers. It took little to bring them out of the slumber. The sudden removal of their blanket as he was snatched from the bed did the trick just fine. They awoke to see a small light coming from the half bath that was situated in their master bedroom. The door was cracked open only slightly, and the light source was weak. They could make out a human shape, standing over their bed though. What's going on?" Sheila grumbled. As their vision came into focus, they realised their son was standing before them. Matt reached over and flipped the lamp on next to their bed. Jeff was standing there, his bandages off, his disfigured face beaming down on them with a long kitchen knife clutched in his right hand. "What are you doing, son?" Matt asked, his mind still trying to shake out the cobwebs of sleep. "He's got a knife!" Sheila screamed, grabbing at her husband's arm. Matt kept his composure though. "Sheila, it's probably the painkillers. He likely got up and got disoriented. Relax for Christ's sake." Jeff tilted his head to one side, still not speaking. He stared hard at his father, slowly bringing the knife up and showing that he saw it well. "Son, what are you doing?" Matt asked. "Scaring you," Jeff replied, with no emotion in his voice. "Matt, do something," Sheila pleaded. "Okay, son, I realise you've been through a lot, but you need to go back to bed. I'm going to call the doctor in the morning." And Jeff moved quickly across to his father's side of the bed, his head moving around, alternating between a normal young man and the deformed ghoul that had been lurking over in the shadows. "Okay, son, you scared me. Is that what you wanted?" Matt asked, adjusting to the middle of the bed to put distance between him and his son. "Good. Now I can start hurting you." Jeff spoke again, with no emotion. His father had time to utter a single syllable, most likely to ask another question to try and reason with his son. Jeff, however, gave him time to do no more than that. He lunged onto the bed, driving the knife into his father's stomach. Matt attempted to fend Jeff off, but the wound to his midsection rendered him into shock, and his arms fell to his side. Jeff could hear his mother screaming, but paid no mind. He wanted to finish with his father first. Removing the knife, Jeff stabbed down into his stomach 3 more times, quickly. His father gasped and coughed with blood. His body jerked and twitched each time the knife found the mark. After the third time, Matt Woods lay still. Sheila had backed up against the headboard of the bed. She wanted to climb down and make a run for it, but she'd balled herself in between the headboard and the end table. In her frantic state of terror and confusion, she couldn't figure out how to do something as simple as dismount a bed. "Jeff, why are you doing this to us?" she asked feebly. "Randy started it. You must have known that, but you ignored it. You had a busted lip. You must have seen that, but you ignored it. I was shot in the face with a flare gun, but you believed Randy. Why? So you could fit in?" Jeff asked in a low, almost growling voice. "No, baby. I believed you. It was just your father's job. And we're new here and... God, Jeff, please," his mother begged. Tell me about homeschool, Mum. Tell me about how you don't want to send me out into public because of my face. Tell me how none of the kids will want to be my friend and how none of their parents will want me to be yours. Tell me about that, Mum. Tell me how nice it's going to be, you homeschooling me." "Jeff, please, I was just stressed. I was worried about you, that's all. Please, I love you." "Mum, I think you should take your own advice. You know what you told me when Lou got home tonight? He wanted to do something nice to welcome me home, and do you remember what you told us instead?" Jeff asked, as he now crawled over, cornering his mother on the bed. "What did I say?" she asked, the question coming out barely a whisper. "Go to sleep!" Jeff snarled and drove the knife into his mother's chest. He stabbed her over and over again. As he did, he found the perfect recipe, that heavenly blend. That rage, hate, and pleasure all mixed into one perfect formula, and for a while Jeff became lost in it all. Jeff opened his brother's bedroom door, not surprised to find his brother asleep. He had dozed off with headphones on, so he slept through all the shouting. That was fine with Jeff. It was easy that Lou had not heard of all of that. Jeff sat down on his brother's bed and nudged him slightly. It took him a moment, but Lou finally opened his eyes and looked up. Jeff moved his earphones to him. "You're free now, Lou," he spoke softly. "Jeff, what are you talking about?" Lou mumbled, still half asleep. "You'll see in the morning. I just wanted to let you know I love you. You'll be my best friend. Remember that, okay?" "Thanks, I love you too. Now, let me go back to sleep," Lou replied, already dozing off again. Jeff smiled and stood up. As he left the room, he looked back at his sleeping brother one last time before he vanished into the night. And that's the end of chapter 1 of Jeff the Killer Reboot. I'm going to be doing the whole series. Hope you guys are looking forward to that. As you do, I really quite like this story. So yeah, I really enjoyed this story, and I can't really say over much that it's a much better reboot than the 2011 version. So yeah, as you do, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends if you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll be seeing you later. And remember, go to sleep.